The acceptance letter trembles in my hands as I stand at the edge of our oak dining table. The Lakefield Business School letterhead gleams under the chandelier light, official and promising. My family sits in their usual spots, Dad scrolling through his investment app, Mom arranging flower stems in a crystal vase, Brooke texting with one hand while sipping orange juice with the other, and Gran quietly observing from her corner chair. "I got in," I announce, my voice steadier than the flutter in my chest. Mom glances up, her smile automatic. "That's wonderful, Claire." Dad doesn't look away from his phone. "Hmm?" I clear my throat and try again, louder this time. "I've been accepted to Lakefield Business School, full academic admission." This catches Dad's attention. He sets his phone down, screen up, notifications still visible, and fixes me with the evaluating gaze he usually reserves for potential investments. "Lakefield? That's an expensive school." He frowns slightly. "What's the tuition now? 40-something thousand a year?" 48,000 plus housing, I reply, having memorized every number, every fee, every potential expense. But there are scholarships I can apply for, and financial aid. The doorbell rings. Mom rises to answer it, returning moments later with another envelope. She hands it to Brooke, whose eyes widen. "It's from Lakefield," Brooke whispers, tearing it open with careful fingers. I watch as my 22-year-old sister, 4 years my junior, extracts her own acceptance letter. The room shifts, focus redirecting like a spotlight finding its true star. "I got in too." Brooke's voice rises with genuine surprise. "I didn't think my application was strong enough." Dad stands immediately, moving around the table to read over her shoulder. "Of course you got in. Your marketing portfolio was exceptional." "2 daughters at Lakefield," Mom says, her voice warm with pride. "What are the chances?" Gran's hands tighten around her teacup, her eyes darting between Brooke and me. Dad returns to his seat, suddenly animated. "We've been saving for Brooke's college fund since she showed such promise in her high school business classes. The account should cover tuition and housing." My fingers crinkle the edges of my letter. The room temperature seems to drop 10 degrees. What about my tuition? The question comes out smaller than intended. Dad looks at me with something between confusion and impatience. "We've saved enough for Brooke's tuition and housing. You're independent. You'll figure it out." Mom nods in agreement. "You've always been so resourceful, Claire." Heat crawls up my neck as the weight of their words sinks in. 26 years of similar moments flash through my mind, a highlight reel of being overlooked, outshined, deemed less worthy of investment. "I see." The words scrape against my tight throat. "Don't look so disappointed," Dad continues, reaching for his coffee. "You've always been the practical one. Brooke needs more support to succeed." Mom jumps in, already planning. "We should look at dorm options right away. The best rooms go quickly." She turns to me as an afterthought. "I have some old bed sheets you can take for your place, wherever you end up." Brooke stares at her letter, her excitement now tempered with discomfort. She doesn't meet my eyes. I stand perfectly still in Mom's threadbare cardigan, a hand-me-down she gave me years ago when it was too worn for her taste. The wool suddenly feels heavy against my skin, a physical reminder of my second-class status in this family. $48,000 per year, I repeat, more to myself than to them, plus housing. "You'll qualify for loans," Dad says dismissively. "With your work experience, you might even find a part-time job on campus." "Unlike your sister," Mom adds, "you've always had a knack for supporting yourself." Their words land like perfectly aimed daggers, familiar enough that I should be immune, sharp enough that I'm not. I look directly at my father, refusing to let my voice waver. "Yes, I suppose I will." Gran's eyes meet mine across the table. Unlike my parents, she sees the injustice unfolding. Unlike me, she lacks the power to change it. "When does the fall semester start?" Mom asks Brooke, already pulling out her phone to check calendar dates. "The 28th of August. Brooke and I answer simultaneously. "We should celebrate," Dad declares, his attention fixed entirely on Brooke. Make reservations at Castelli's for tonight. I carefully fold my acceptance letter and tuck it into my pocket. The cotton fibers absorb the dampness from my palms. 60 days until freshman orientation at Lakefield. 60 days to figure out how to fund a $48,000 per year education entirely on my own. Will you be joining us at Castelli's, Claire? Gran asks, the first direct question anyone has addressed to me since my announcement. I have a shift at the print shop tonight, I answer, calculating the hours I'd need to work to make even the smallest dent in tuition. Can't afford to miss it. Mom doesn't look up from her phone as she researches dorm options. Always the responsible one. I stroke the worn elbow of the cardigan, feeling the thin spot where the wool has nearly given way. Dad checks his investment portfolio again, smiling at whatever numbers appear on the screen. Brooke begins creating a list of supplies she'll need for her fully funded college experience. I had no idea that their blatant favoritism would be the last gift my parents ever gave me. The sound of Dad's expensive golf shoes tapping down the hallway reaches my room. He pauses at my door, noticing the light. Been up all night? He asks, leaning against the doorframe. I nod, not trusting my voice. You'll sort something out. You always do. His hand pats my shoulder briefly before withdrawing. I'm off to meet Henderson at the club. New investment opportunity. From my window, I watch him slide into his BMW, golf clubs gleaming in the early morning light. The sprinklers activate on our perfect lawn, droplets catching the sunrise in tiny prisms. By sunrise, I wasn't mourning their support. I was strategizing how to succeed so thoroughly they'd be forced to acknowledge what they'd dismissed. The empty space beside my name in the family ledger of worth would be filled not with their validation, but with achievements they couldn't ignore. Dr. Alvarez's words echo in my mind. Their limitation shouldn't become your prison. I close the spreadsheet, save it with a new file name, independent, future, .xlssx, and set my jaw against the exhaustion pulling at my bones. First step, find housing I could afford alone. Second, secure additional financial aid without their signatures. Third, prove every calculation my father had ever made about my worth fundamentally flawed. The cardigan hangs on my chair, threadbare and faded. I slip it on against the morning chill, finding strange comfort in its familiar imperfection. At 2:14 a.m., while my parents slept soundly after celebrating Brooke's future at Castelli's, I stare at my ceiling. The glow-in-the-dark stars I'd placed there years ago have faded to dim specks, barely visible in the darkness, much like my parents' recognition of my achievements. My fingers tap restlessly against my notebook, the numbers I've written mocking me with their impossible math. Tuition, $48,000. Housing, $9,600. Books, $1,200. Transportation, $2,400. $61,200, I whisper to the shadows, per year. The digital alarm clock on my nightstand bathes the room in red light. In less than 3 hours, I'll need to be awake for my morning shift at the print shop. Sleep feels as distant as parental support. My mind wanders back to my 8th birthday. I'd asked for art supplies, professional colored pencils, and a leather-bound sketchbook. Mom had wrapped those items with careful precision, but when the time came, she handed the package to Brooke. I received practical clothes in muted colors that didn't show dirt. When I asked why, Mom smoothed my hair and said, "Your sister has special talents that need nurturing." I roll onto my side, pulling the thin blanket tighter around my shoulders. The memory shifts to high school graduation. Dad presented Brooke with keys to a new Civic to help her commute to college interviews. My gift was a refurbished laptop because I was so good with budgeting. The words still carry their sting 4 years later. I switch on my bedside lamp and reach for the journal where I've meticulously documented my achievements. 4 years as class president, 0 parental attendance at ceremonies. Perfect grades while working 20 hours weekly, zero recognition. $7,840 saved for college, not even enough for one semester at Lakefield. The mirror on my closet door reflects a woman I barely recognize. Dark circles under my eyes, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing a faded t-shirt from a campus visit I paid for myself. Is this really where 26 years had led? A woman so accustomed to making do with less that she'd stopped expecting equal treatment? I reach for my phone. The screen illuminates with the late hour, but I dial anyway. Claire, Dr. Alvarez answers, her voice thick with sleep. Is everything okay? They're paying for Brooke's entire education, I say without preamble. Not a penny for mine. A pause, then rustling fabric. I picture my former business teacher sitting up in bed, switching on a lamp just as I had done. I'm so sorry, she says finally, but not surprised. What should I do? The math doesn't work. Even with loans, I'd need a cosigner. They won't help. I've calculated every scenario. Their limitations shouldn't become your prison, Claire. Her words hang in the silence between us. I open my journal to a fresh page and write them down, the pen pressing hard enough to emboss the next sheet. You've always had to work twice as hard for half the recognition, Doctor. Alvarez continues. It's profoundly unfair. But consider this, what would your life look like if you stopped waiting for their approval? After we hang up, I pull out a fresh legal pad. In precise columns, I list every barrier. Tuition, $48,000 year. Housing, minimum $9,600 year. No parental cosign for loans. Full course load that limits working hours. Beside each problem, I force myself to write a potential solution, no matter how improbable. 54 days until tuition payment deadline, I mutter to myself. 54 days to either find a miracle or build one myself. The horizon lightens to deep blue as I create a meticulous spreadsheet. Maximum student loans without cosigner. Work-study options. Budget cuts so severe they trim away everything but necessities. Scholarship deadlines most already passed, but a few still open. I apply to 3 before the sun fully rises. 1 week before freshman orientation, I stand in the doorway of my new bedroom, if you could call it that. The space barely fits a twin bed and a desk salvaged from someone's curb. Sunlight filters through a window with a crack that splits the glass like a jagged smile. It's not fancy, but it's quiet for studying, Naomi says, setting down a cardboard box labeled books. Sweat darkens the collar of her t-shirt. The 3rd floor means we don't hear the street noise. The wooden floor creaks beneath my feet as I place my suitcase beside the bed. The rhythmic rumbling of the city bus passing outside will become the soundtrack of my life, the baseline to which I'll choreograph the next 4 years. Thanks for helping, I say, opening the window to catch a breeze. August heat clings to my skin like a fever. I'll be a ghost roommate anyway. Between classes and work, I'll barely be here. Naomi leans against the doorframe, her expression curious. Your sister got the dorm, right? I remember you mentioned that. My throat tightens. I picture Brooke's fully furnished suite with its coordinated bedding and mini fridge purchased during a shopping spree I wasn't invited to join. Yes, she did. College isn't supposed to feel like this, Naomi says, watching me unpack shirts into the shallow drawer of a scratch dresser. Like a punishment. It's not punishment, I reply, straightening my back. It's an investment. 3 days before classes begin, I sit across from Mrs. Delaney at the financial aid office. Her fingernails tap against her keyboard as she reviews my application. Maximum federal loans approved, she says, glancing up. That covers about 60% of your tuition. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, making the room feel smaller. What about the rest? Mrs. Delaney pushes a stack of papers toward me. You can apply for private loans, but you'll need a cosigner with good credit history. My parents' faces flash in my mind. Dad's dismissive wave, Mom's automatic agreement. That won't be an option. My voice sounds steadier than I feel. What about work? Study programs? Those fill up months in advance, she replies, sympathy creasing the corners of her eyes. But I can put you on the wait list. Later that night, I open my laptop at the rickety desk. The spreadsheet stares back at me, numbers arranged in neat columns that refuse to balance. Rent, $600 per month. Food, $150 per month. Bus pass, $85 per month. Textbooks, $800 per semester. I create a new column labeled Tuition Gap, $12,000 annually. The screen blurs as I blink away exhaustion. 3 days until classes begin. 3 days to find another income source to cover the remaining $12,000 gap in annual expenses. The phone buzzes beside my laptop. Dr. Alvarez's text reads, "Meet me at orientation tomorrow, 2 p.m., Business Building lobby." The next afternoon, I stand in Lakefield's imposing business building. Students stream past in designer clothes that make my thrift store blazer feel like a costume. The marble floor gleams beneath chandeliers that probably cost more than my yearly rent. "Claire," Dr. Alvarez waves from across the lobby. Beside her stands a woman with silver-streaked hair pulled into a precise bun. "This is Professor Martinez," Dr. Alvarez says, beaming. "I've told her all about your business portfolio." Professor Martinez extends her hand. Her grip is firm, her gaze appraising. "This is unusually practical work for someone your age," she says, holding up a printed copy of my high school business project. "Thank you," I reply, uncertain whether her words are compliment or criticism. "I need a research assistant," she continues, closing the folder. "It won't cover everything, but it's a start." Hope flickers in my chest, small but determined. "I'm interested." "Good." Professor Martinez nods. "There's also a business competition in the spring. The prize is a substantial scholarship. The deadline is right when your sister's spring break trip is scheduled." My expression must betray something because she adds, "Dr. Alvarez mentioned some of your family dynamics." That evening, I toss clothes into a donation bag items I can live without to save laundry money. Naomi appears in my doorway, holding something gray and woolen. "You're getting rid of this?" She unfolds my mother's cardigan, examining the worn elbows. "It's just a hand-me-down," I say, reaching for it. Naomi slips it on dramatically, striking a pose like a runway model. "Vintage is in. Besides, it looks warmer than your thin coat." I take the cardigan back, running my fingers over the threadbare cuffs. The wool feels different now, less like a symbol of second-hand worth and more like a reminder. "Some hand-me-downs can be repurposed for strength," I murmur, folding it carefully and placing it in my dresser drawer. That night, the bus rumbles beneath my window, vibrating the glass in its frame. From my bed, I can see Lakefield's business building in the distance, its windows glowing like distant stars. In the morning, I'll wake before sunrise. I'll ride the bus for an hour. I'll sit in classrooms filled with students who slept in dorm rooms their parents paid for. And I'll take notes. I'll raise my hand. I'll do what I've always done, turn invisibility into opportunity. The cardigan waits in my drawer like a promise. Some things break under pressure, others become unbreakable. The alarm screams at 4:30 a.m., 3 weeks into my first semester at Lakefield Business School. I swat at it with practiced precision, silencing the harsh buzz before it can penetrate the thin walls of my shared house. That sound, metallic and unforgiving, has become the soundtrack of my determination. I shuffle to the bathroom in darkness, careful not to wake Naomi. Cold water shocks my system as I splash it against my face. The mirror reveals shadows beneath my eyes that no amount of drugstore concealer can hide. "You look like death warmed over," Naomi whispers from the doorway, her hair a tangled mess atop her head. "Sorry if I woke you." I reach for my toothbrush. Not your fault. These walls are made of paper. She leans against the doorframe, watching me with concern. This schedule is killing you. I spit toothpaste into the sink. I'm fine. But I'm not. The print shop manager called yesterday, his voice apologetic but firm. Business is slow. We're cutting everyone's hours through winter. Just like that, a $400 monthly shortfall in my already impossible budget. The bus arrives at 5:15 a.m. I claim my usual seat by the window, spreading flashcards across my lap. Marketing concepts blur before my eyes as the bus rumbles toward campus. By 6 a.m., I'm camped in the library's quiet corner, reviewing lecture notes before my research assistant shift begins at 7. Professor Martinez finds me there, head drooping dangerously close to my open textbook. Claire. Her voice startles me upright. How long have you been here? Not long. I straighten, blinking away exhaustion. She sits across from me, placing her coffee between us. Steam rises in lazy spirals. Your research is excellent, but your presentation yesterday. She hesitates. You froze. Heat crawls up my neck. Standing before 30 classmates, my carefully prepared marketing analysis had evaporated from my mind. For 10 excruciating seconds, I'd stood silent, my father's voice echoing in my head. Brooke's the natural communicator in the family. I know, I admit. It won't happen again. Professor Martinez pushes her coffee toward me. Drink. Then tell me what's really going on. The truth spills out with surprising ease: the reduced work hours, the impossible commute, falling asleep over textbooks, struggling to keep pace with classmates who don't juggle full-time jobs alongside their studies. She listens without interruption, then reaches into her bag for a small recorder. Start taping lectures, listen during your commute, and this, she slides a folded paper across the table. My study technique. Divide material into 15-minute chunks. Focus intensely, then rest for 5 minutes. Retention improves dramatically. I pocket the recorder, oddly touched by her practical solution. No platitudes about trying harder or managing time better, just tools. Your marketing presentation is in 2 days, she continues. 48 hours to master concepts you've barely had time to read. My stomach tightens. I'll be ready. I know. She stands, retrieving her coffee. Oh, and Claire, record yourself presenting. Listen to your own voice until it drowns out whatever critical voice you're hearing instead. That night, I sit cross-legged on my bed, mother's cardigan wrapped around my shoulders. The wool feels heavier than usual, the worn elbows a reminder of its history. I could sell it at the vintage shop downtown, maybe get $40 toward textbooks, but my fingers trace the frayed edges with unexpected affection. Not yet. I still need the reminder of how to make something valuable from what others discard. I record myself presenting in whispers while Naomi sleeps. Play it back. Record again. By 2 a.m., the words flow with unexpected confidence. By 3 a.m., I've collapsed into dreamless sleep, alarm set for 4:30. The morning of my presentation arrives with leaden skies and freezing rain. I stand before the class, exhaustion a physical weight. Professor Williams nods encouragingly as I distribute my handouts: practical case studies of small businesses operating under severe budget constraints. Marketing theory is valuable, I begin, my voice steadier than expected. But implementation without adequate resources requires innovation. I speak from experience, from watching small business owners at the print shop stretch every dollar, from calculating bus fares against grocery budgets, from finding ways to compete with classmates whose parents funded their education. When I finish, the silence stretches for 3 heartbeats before Professor Williams speaks. Exceptional practical application, Miss Thompson. Your real-world perspective adds considerable value to our theoretical discussions. Students nod in agreement. Two ask questions about my methodology. Another requests my contact information for a study group. The grade appears on my student portal that evening. A, with a note. See me about research expansion. I stare at the screen, fingertips pressed against the warm laptop casing. Not perfect, but earned. Wholly mine. My phone buzzes with an email notification from Professor Martinez. Research assistant hours increased to 15-week, with a corresponding pay increase that nearly covers the print shop shortfall. If you've ever had to choose between sleep and success at 26, you know exactly how that email notification felt, not just money validation. I'm halfway through a text to Naomi when another notification appears, this one from the university administration. Lakefield Business Innovation Competition minus $25,000 scholarship prize. My heart stutters as I open the email. The competition requires an original business proposal with implementation plan. Submissions due in 6 weeks. Finals presentation coinciding with spring break. The same spring break when Brooks' Cancun trip funded by our parents is scheduled. I save the email, set my phone aside, and pull Mother's cardigan tighter around my shoulders. $25,000 would cover half my yearly expenses. If I win. The harsh buzz of my alarm will come again at 4:30 a.m. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, I set it with something like hope. 6 weeks into my first semester, I find myself in Professor Martinez's office for our weekly research meeting. The evening sun stretches long shadows across her book-lined shelves as Vivaldi's Four Seasons flows softly from hidden speakers. My eyes burn from last night's 4-hour study marathon after a 10-hour print shop shift. Claire. Professor Martinez sets down her pen and removes her reading glasses. You haven't heard a word I've said for the past 3 minutes. I blink, yanking my thoughts back to her office. I'm sorry, Professor. I was just. My voice trails off as I struggle to fabricate an acceptable excuse. Falling asleep with your eyes open? She leans forward, elbows on her desk. This is the 3rd time this week. The clock on her wall reads 6:47 p.m. In 13 minutes, I need to catch the last express bus or face a 90-minute commute with 3 transfers. My stomach growls, reminding me I haven't eaten since the granola bar at dawn. I'm fine, I insist, straightening my posture. About the research on small business digital marketing strategies. Stop. Professor Martinez walks around her desk and sits in the chair beside me. This close, I notice the fine lines around her eyes, the silver threads woven through her dark hair. You're working yourself to collapse. What's driving you, passion or proof? The question hits with unexpected force. My throat tightens. Both, I whisper, the words scraping past my lips. She waits, silent. The classical music fills the space between us, strings rising and falling like the tide. My whole life. I continue. I've been the practical one, the responsible one, the one who doesn't need help. My fingers find the worn cuff of my mother's cardigan beneath my blazer sleeve. Now I'm proving I can succeed without their support. At what cost? Professor Martinez asks. I glance at my research notes, my handwriting deteriorating across the page. Last week, I'd fallen asleep on the bus and missed my stop, adding an hour to my commute. Yesterday, I'd put salt instead of sugar in my coffee and didn't notice until the 3rd sip. Whatever it takes, I answer. Professor Martinez studies me for a long moment. When I was 30, I worked 3 jobs while finishing my dissertation. I thought exhaustion was a badge of honor until I collapsed during a presentation. She rolls up her sleeve, revealing a thin scar along her forearm. 10 stitches from hitting the podium on my way down. The clock reads 6:52, 8 minutes until my bus. Claire, your work is exceptional. Your insights are valuable, but you won't make it to graduation at this pace. Her words land like stones in still water, ripples of truth expanding outward. 14 days until the business innovation competition submission deadline, I say, more to myself than to her. 14 days to create something worthy of that scholarship. Professor Martinez notices me touching the cardigan again. That cardigan you wear it when you're most stressed or tired. I look down at the faded wool, surprised by her observation. It was my mother's. She gave it to me when it was too worn for her taste. I run my fingers over the threadbare elbow. A hand. Me down like everything else. Yet you wear it during your hardest moments, she says. I suppose it reminds me of where I come from. I pull my blazer tighter, hiding the worn wool. Keep that close, Professor Martinez says. It reminds you where you came from, but not where you're limited to going. She glances at the clock. Go catch your bus. But tomorrow, we're developing a sustainable schedule. The next afternoon, I'm crossing campus when I spot Dad's silver Lexus gleaming in the visitor parking lot. My parents and Brooke stand at the campus center, a tour guide gesturing toward the business building where I spend most of my waking hours. My first instinct is to duck behind a column, to avoid this collision of worlds. But Professor Martinez's words echo in my mind. I straighten my shoulders and walk directly toward them. Claire? Brooke spots me first, her surprise genuine. We didn't know you'd be here. I'm always here, I say, approaching the group. This is my school too. My father checks his watch. We're touring campus with Brooke. Her professor suggested the library resources for her marketing project. The ones you think are merely adequate for your unique daughter? The words slip out before I can stop them. Dad's eyebrows shoot up. Before he can respond, Professor Martinez appears beside me. Claire, there you are. She extends her hand to my parents. Professor Martinez, I'm overseeing Claire's research work. She's one of our most promising assistants. My mother's mouth forms a small O of surprise. Research assistant? You didn't mention that, Claire. Claire's developing a digital marketing framework for small businesses operating under severe budget constraints. Professor Martinez continues. Her practical approach has impressed several department heads. Dad tilts his head, studying me with new interest. What kind of framework? Before I can answer, I overhear a conversation between two faculty members passing nearby. Henderson will be judging the innovation competition finals, one says. The board just confirmed. That's why they moved it to coincide with spring break, the other replies. To accommodate his schedule. My stomach drops. Henderson, Dad's golf buddy. The finals scheduled during Brooke's spring break trip that our parents are funding. The competition that represents my best chance at scholarship money. Claire? Dad prompts. I turn back to him, mind racing. It's a comprehensive digital marketing strategy for businesses with limited resources, maximizing impact with minimal investment. Sounds interesting, he says, and for the first time in years, he seems genuinely curious about my work. Later that evening, I tell Naomi about the encounter as we sit on our tiny kitchen floor, eating ramen noodles. So enter anyway, she says, twirling noodles around her fork. Win on merit, not connections. But if Henderson is judging, then you'll have to be so good he can't ignore you. Naomi sets down her bowl. Show me your surprised winner face. What? Your surprised winner face. When they announce you won despite your father's friend being a judge. I stare at her, then burst into reluctant laughter. We spend the next 10 minutes practicing exaggerated shocked winner expressions in our bathroom mirror until my sides hurt from laughing. For the first time in weeks, I feel something other than exhaustion, a spark of determination, untainted by resentment. Perhaps winning isn't about proving them wrong. Perhaps it's about proving myself right. The morning of the Business Innovation Competition semifinals arrived with unexpected spring sunshine. I smoothed my thrift store blazer, purchased with 3 weeks of careful budget adjustments, and checked the flash drive containing my presentation for the 5th time. "You look like you might throw up," Naomi observed, leaning against our bathroom doorframe. "When's the last time you ate something?" I blinked at my reflection. The woman staring back had shadows beneath her eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide. "Yesterday. Lunch, I think." "Here." Naomi tossed me a protein bar. "Eat this on the bus. Your brain needs fuel, even if your stomach thinks it's full of butterflies." The protein bar sat heavy in my pocket as I navigated the hour-long bus ride to campus. Each stop brought more passengers, their bodies pressing closer, the collective heat making my carefully pressed shirt stick to my back. I closed my eyes, rehearsing key points from my presentation on small business digital marketing services. The concept was solid, born from necessity rather than theory, tested through helping 3 local shops increase their online presence while working on my research project. The distinctive tap of my budget dress shoes against the auditorium stage echoed through the space as I approached the podium. Each step bounced back at me, a drumbeat marking my journey from dismissed daughter to respected competitor. The judges' table stretched before me, 5 industry professionals with expressions ranging from polite interest to barely concealed boredom. Then I saw them. 3 rows back, center section, Dad in his charcoal business suit, Mom with her pearl earrings catching the light, and Brooke in a tasteful blue dress I'd never seen before. My throat went dry. Professor Martinez hadn't mentioned inviting families. "Miss Thompson, whenever you're ready," the lead judge prompted, her pen poised over her evaluation sheet. I inserted my flash drive into the laptop, hands steady despite the tremor in my chest. The title slide appeared on the projection screen behind me. Digital Marketing Solutions for Small Businesses, Maximizing Impact with Minimal Investment. "Good morning," I began, voice stronger than I felt. Small businesses represent the backbone of local economies, yet they often lack the resources to compete effectively in digital spaces dominated by corporate giants. The presentation flowed smoothly through the first 5 slides. The judges leaned forward when I shared real metrics from my test cases. Even Dad's eyebrows lifted slightly when I outlined the cost-effective strategies I'd developed. Then it happened. Mid-transition to slide 6, the screen froze. I clicked the remote. Nothing happened. Clicked again. The same frozen image mocked me from the wall. From the front row, Brooks whispered, "Oh no," traveled across the suddenly silent auditorium. "Technical difficulties," I said, attempting a professional smile while trying to restart the presentation. The laptop screen displayed an error message. "Fatal exception." The software had crashed completely. My throat closed as if Father's dismissal was physically choking me. I could hear his voice. "This is why we focused on Brooke." The crushing weight of 24 eyes watching my failure paralyzed my fingers on the keyboard. For 12 excruciating seconds, I stood frozen. The silence expanded until it felt physical, pressing against my skin. The lead judge glanced at her watch. 4 minutes remaining in my allotted presentation time. 4 minutes to salvage this opportunity or surrender completely. My fingers found the worn cuff of Mother's cardigan beneath my blazer. The familiar texture against my skin anchored me to reality. I took a deep breath, disconnected the laptop, and stepped forward, abandoning the podium entirely. Technology fails, experience doesn't. I moved to stand directly before the judge's table. "Let me tell you what I've learned working 35 hours weekly, while maintaining a 3.9 GPA. Without slides, without notes, I explained how my first-hand understanding of budget constraints had led to innovations other students only theorized about. I described the 3-tier implementation model I developed that allowed small businesses to scale their digital presence according to their growth. When resources are limited, I said, making deliberate eye contact with each judge, creativity becomes your most valuable asset. My system works because it was born from necessity, not luxury. The lead judge stopped writing to listen, her pen hovering above her notepad. The middle-aged man beside her nodded slowly, his initial skepticism softening into consideration. When I finished, applause scattered through the auditorium like rainfall, starting tentative at first, then building. Professor Martinez beamed from her seat near the door. My parents' expressions were harder to read, surprise, mingled with something I couldn't identify from this distance. "Thank you, Miss Thompson," the lead judge said. That was unexpectedly compelling. I gathered my materials, dropping my note cards in the process. They scattered across the stage floor like rectangular confetti, drawing unexpected laughter from the audience. I joined in, the tension breaking as I knelt to collect them. "Finalists will be posted tomorrow morning," the competition organizer announced after the last presenter finished. "Thank you all for your outstanding contributions." As I packed my defunct laptop, the lead judge approached, extending a business card between two manicured fingers. "Regardless of the competition outcome, I'd like to discuss an internship opportunity," she said quietly. "Your ability to adapt under pressure is exactly what we look for." The card felt impossibly light in my palm, yet carried the weight of validation I'd been working toward for months. I tucked it carefully into my wallet, beside the bus pass that had carried me back and forth across the divide between my two worlds. Professor Martinez squeezed my shoulder as I exited the stage. "That recovery was masterful, Claire." "I nearly collapsed," I admitted. "Everyone nearly collapses," she replied. "Success isn't about avoiding the fall, it's about how gracefully you recover from stumbling." Across the auditorium, my father stood watching our exchange, his expression unreadable. For once, I didn't try to interpret it. Tomorrow's finalist announcement suddenly seemed less important than the business card in my wallet and Professor Martinez's words echoing in my ears. I had stumbled publicly, recovered gracefully, and somehow emerged stronger. The stage lights had witnessed both my vulnerability and my resilience, and so had my family. For the first time since receiving my acceptance letter, I felt something beyond determination, something that felt dangerously close to triumph. The acceptance letter trembles in my hands as I stand at the edge of our oak dining table. The Lakefield Business School letterhead gleams under the chandelier light, official and promising. My family sits in their usual spots, Dad scrolling through his investment app, Mom arranging flower stems in a crystal vase, Brooke texting with one hand while sipping orange juice with the other, and Gran quietly observing from her corner chair. 24 hours after being named one of 3 finalists in the business innovation competition, I sit across from my family at Castelli's, the white tablecloth between us like neutral territory. Dad ordered a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon to celebrate both daughters, his voice carrying a new note I've never heard before, pride, tinged with uncertainty. Crystal glasses clink in toast. The sound reverberates recognition I've been working toward for 26 years. "To Claire and Brooke," Mom says, her lipstick leaving a perfect crescent on the rim of her glass. "Our accomplished daughters." The word "our" sticks in my throat along with the wine. 6 months ago, Brooke was their accomplished daughter. I was the responsible one, the practical one, the one who would figure it out. "The competition judges were impressed with your presentation recovery," Dad says, cutting into his filet mignon. "Quick thinking under pressure, that's what business is about." I set my fork down beside my barely touched salmon. I learned that from necessity, not natural talent. The table falls silent. A server refills water glasses, the ice cubes clinking like tiny alarms. "What do you mean?" Mom asks, her smile fixed in place. "When you're working 35 hours weekly while maintaining a full course load, you learn to solve problems quickly or drown." I fold my napkin precisely. There's no safety net when you're the only one holding the rope. Dad shifts in his chair, his eyes darting to other diners as if checking who might overhear. Claire, we always knew you were capable. Capable enough to deserve the same support as Brooke? The question hangs between us. 2 hours until I need to return to campus for finals preparation. 2 hours to reset our family dynamic or walk away for good. Brooke stares at her plate. Mom's fingers twist her pearl necklace. Dad clears his throat twice before speaking. You've proven yourself remarkably well, he says, reaching for his wine. Better than we anticipated, honestly. That wasn't the goal, I reply. My voice steady despite the heat rising in my chest. I wasn't trying to prove anything to you. I was building something for myself. And you've done admirably, Mom interjects. We're very proud. Now, I say, you're proud now. My phone vibrates against the table. The caller ID displays Lakefield Business School. I excuse myself and step toward the restaurant entrance, where the evening air cools my flushed face. Hello, this is Claire Thompson. Miss Thompson, this is Richard Donovan, lead judge from the competition. His voice carries the confidence of someone accustomed to making career-changing decisions. I wanted to personally inform you that regardless of the final competition outcome, North Star Consulting would like to offer you a paid internship starting next semester. My free hand grips the brick wall beside me. Thank you, Mr. Donovan. I'm honored. Your practical approach to small business marketing solutions impressed our entire panel. We need problem solvers who understand real-world constraints, not just theoretical models. After confirming details about the internship, I return to the table where 3 pairs of eyes track my movement. Dad's expression is particularly intent. Good news? He asks. The lead judge just offered me a paid internship with North Star Consulting, regardless of the competition outcome. Dad's fork freezes halfway to his mouth. Richard Donovan? From North Star? Yes. I take a deliberate sip of water. Do you know him? We've crossed paths. Dad's gaze sharpens. Did you mention our connection? What connection? Richard and I were in the same fraternity at Lakefield. I'd planned to reach out before the finals to put in a good word. The restaurant lights suddenly seemed too bright. The background chatter too loud. Realization washes over me. Dad had connections to the competition judge. Connections he would have leveraged for Brooke without hesitation. But for me, they remained unused until my success became something he could claim partial credit for. I earned this on merit, I say, each word distinct and firm, not connections. Mom leans forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Now that you've proven yourself, we could help with tuition. We have some savings that… No. The syllable cuts through her offer. I've managed this far. I'll complete what I started on my own terms. Brooke's eyes fill with tears. I should have spoken up years ago about the unfairness. I knew what was happening, but I just accepted the advantages. Her admission loosens something tight in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement, the first step towards something new between us. I don't need your validation anymore. I tell my parents, but I would welcome your respect. Dad sets down his knife and fork with precise movements. His hands always so steady. When signing checks for Brooke's expenses tremble slightly. We misjudged, he says finally. That was our failure, not yours. The words should feel like victory. Instead, they feel like closing a book I've already finished reading, necessary but anticlimactic. Their blatant favoritism had indeed been a gift. It forced me to build something entirely my own, something they couldn't take credit for or control. I should get back to campus, I say, rising from my chair. Finals preparation. Mom stands, awkward in her uncertainty about whether to hug me. We'll see you at the competition finals? If you'd like to come, yes. Dad pulls out his wallet, but I place my hand over his. I've got this, I say, laying my credit card on the table. My treat. His expression cycles through surprise, protest, and finally, a grudging respect. He nods once, a businessman acknowledging a power shift. Outside, the spring evening wraps around me like a promise. My phone buzzes with a text from Professor Martinez. Need a ride back to campus? I'm 10 minutes away. I text back a quick, yes please, and watch headlights sweep across the parking lot, each one illuminating a different path forward. None lead back to where I started. All of them are mine to choose. 6 months after the business innovation competition, I unlock the door to my apartment. Not extravagant by anyone's standards, but utterly small one-bedroom on the third floor of a brick building with decent natural light and walls I can paint any color I choose. The sound of my own key in my own door, daily reminder that I had built this life without their help, has become my favorite melody. I drop my bag on the small entryway bench, slip off my shoes, and pad across the worn hardwood to my kitchen. Tonight's agenda: client call at 7, finals preparation until 9, then perhaps an actual full night's sleep. Home, sweet home, I whisper to the empty room. My apartment isn't fancy. The kitchen cabinets are original to the 1970s building. The bathroom sink drips unless I turn the handle with exactly the right pressure. But what it lacks in luxury, it makes up for in significance. No one handed me these keys. No one subsidized this rent. Every stick of carefully selected secondhand furniture represents hours worked, priorities chosen, sacrifices made. I pour water into my electric kettle and glance at the calendar hanging beside my refrigerator. The consultation appointments with local businesses, 5 this week alone, form a constellation of promise across the page. Each one generating income, building my portfolio, securing my future. My home office occupies the corner of my living room, where the light lingers longest. A simple desk from a yard sale, refinished during rare free hours. Above it hangs my business innovation competition finalist certificate in a frame found at a thrift store. Not the winner's plaque that honor went to a senior with a brilliant supply chain solution, but the recognition mattered more than the scholarship would have. I trace my finger along the edge of the frame. Second place never felt so much like first, I murmur. The paid internship that followed proved more valuable than the prize money anyway. 3 afternoons weekly with Patterson and Klein Marketing, learning industry secrets while earning enough to cover my textbooks for spring semester. The kettle clicks off. I make tea in the mug Naomi gave me when I moved out of our shared house. Boss lady, emblazoned in gold script that refuses to fade despite hundreds of washings. My phone buzzes with a text from Professor Martinez. Client loved your proposal. Wants to meet next week to discuss implementation. I smile. The words no longer surprise me, though the warm satisfaction they bring remains undiminished. I carry my tea to the shadow box mounted on the wall opposite my desk. Inside, Mother's cardigan rests in careful folds behind glass, positioned beside my competition medal. The wool that once felt heavy with disappointment now serves a different purpose. Below it, a small note card reads, "From hand, me, down to stepping stone." The woman who stares back from my mirror is neither bitter nor broken. She is self-made in every sense that matters. The face looking back at me has new lines at the corners of the eyes, testament to long hours and hard work, but also laugh lines I don't remember having before. My posture has changed 2 shoulders back, chin level, the unconscious stance of someone who expects to be heard. I settle at my desk, opening my laptop to the student mentorship program proposal. 30 days until launch. 30 days to formalize what I've learned. That sometimes being overlooked is the first step to becoming outstanding. The program will match first-generation college students with local business leaders, creating connections that privilege and family networks typically provide. Success wasn't proving them wrong, it was proving myself right. My parents have receded from daily focus to occasional thought characters in my origin story, rather than directors of my future. We speak monthly now, conversations careful but less laden with old hurts. They call to share neighborhood news or ask about my classes. I answer truthfully but selectively. Some boundaries require maintenance. I pull up the presentation slides for tomorrow's marketing class, making final adjustments to the deck. A notification banner slides across my screen, an email from the dean's office about the upcoming honors ceremony. My name appears on the list of students receiving recognition for academic excellence. Another item to add to my growing collection of proof. Not that I need it anymore. The relentless drive to validate my worth has softened into something healthier pride in work well done for its own sake. My phone buzzes again. This time, a text from Brooke. Would you consider being my maid of honor? You're the strongest person I know. I stare at the message, fingers hovering over the screen. The complicated tapestry of our relationship has been rewoven these past months, thread by careful thread. She visits sometimes, bringing coffee and genuine interest in my work. I've stopped blaming her for accepting advantages freely given. She's stopped pretending not to notice the disparity. My thumbs move across the screen. I'd be honored. Coffee next week to discuss? Her response comes immediately. Perfect. Thursday at Linden Cafe? My treat. I set the phone down, turning back to my work with a small smile. Family dynamics aren't set in stone. Sometimes the greatest gift is the opportunity to redefine your relationship not as the person they expected you to be, but as the person you've proven yourself to be. The evening stretches before me, peaceful and purposeful. Tomorrow will bring its challenges, its victories, its lessons. But tonight, in this space built entirely from my own effort, I am exactly where I belong. I take a sip of tea, open my planner, and begin to write.